Hey all, Tom Moran here from Tom's Big Spiders. This episode, we're going to be taking a look at maybe my favorite genus of tarantulas, Poecilotheria. I absolutely love Poecilotheria, and anybody that's watched my channel for any amount of time knows this. This episode, we're going to be looking at Poecilotheria ornata, or the Fringed Ornamental. Now, I have a history with these guys because I had a female way back in the day, an adult female that unfortunately passed away. I managed to pick up 2 more slings before the Poecilotheria, Sri Lankan Poecilotheria ban went into effect in the United States. And unfortunately, both of them ended up to be males, and I kept them for quite some time. Well, now I have some more. I'm raising them up, hoping to get some ladies that I can keep for quite some time. Now, a note about the Sri Lankan Poecilotheria species. I know there's some confusion out there about them. Basically, the United States Fish and Wildlife Service passed a law several years ago that said you cannot sell the Sri Lankan species across state lines. Basically, what you can do is you can gift them to somebody, and that means a legitimate gift, or you can send them out for a breeding loan. They weren't trying to stop breeding, but they were trying to keep the interstate sales of them down. Now, we can argue all day about how much sense this makes in terms of saving these animals in the wild. We won't get into that. Bottom line, it's a law, and it means that we have to abide by that law. Now, unfortunately, a lot of these are given away sometimes as freebies from certain places. They'll say, if you buy this, we'll give you a free one of these, and therefore it's a gift. It doesn't count. If it's part of another transaction, if they're making money off the transaction, it doesn't count. So just a heads up there. And as far as the ones that are affected by this law, we're talking about fasciata, vittata, ornata, smithy, and subfusca. So if you see any of those offered as freebies, feel free to shoot me an email. I got quite a list going of dealers that are doing this because, quite frankly, all we're doing in the United States is shooting ourselves in the foot if we're flaunting our flagrant violation of these laws. So this episode, obviously, we're looking at the ornata that has a reputation for being a little more high-strung. I'll let you see how the rehousings go. I'm rehousing what were 3 rather rambunctious juveniles. It goes pretty well. I'll spoil it here. But one thing that I like to impart to people is that everything you've heard about Poecilotheria species, just kind of put it to the back of your mind. They're not as bad as people make them out to be, and a lot of us find them to be pretty reasonable overall. So enough of me talking. Let's take a look at Poecilotheria ornata, or the Fringed Ornamental. All right, so we're about to rehouse hopefully 3 of my juvenile Poecilotheria ornatas, or Fringed Ornamentals. I got these as a gift in October 2022 from Emil. If you guys listen to the podcast, you remember Emil and my buddy Aaron are in charge of the Tarantula Sustainment Project. I will actually put a link to that podcast in this because I do think it's something all keepers in the U.S. need to be aware of. But anyway, he legitimately sent these as a gift, meaning there was no money transfer, no strings attached. He raised a sack of them. He gave them to me. And that's because in the United States, it is illegal for the Sri Lankan poke species to be sold over state lines. I'll probably do a lot more of this in the introduction, but I just want to make sure it's here as well for people that may skip that. And it is illegal to basically sell them across state lines. You can give a breeding loan over state lines. You can give a legitimate gift. They cannot be used as freebies with purchases. That is part of a purchase. It does not count. So if you are receiving these from a vendor, they are breaking the law. They are sending them to you as a freebie. This is happening quite a bit, and it drives me nuts because it kind of flies in the face of the fish and wildlife. But anyway, they're put on a decent amount of size. Now, when I got these, they were about an inch, just over an inch, a pretty good size, or 2.54 centimeters. And I put them originally into the 20-ounce deli cups. I've talked before about the fact that I like the 20-ounce deli cups because they're not as high if they're smaller slings. They give enough room to kind of put a smaller arboreal in, or a fossorial species. However, in this case, they put on size rather quickly. You can see all this substrate up here was not up there originally. It was down there. This is the burrowing and the digging it did. Small Poecilotheria slings and sometimes even juveniles will do a bit of burrowing and digging. So know that if you get one and it's not hanging out on your piece of cork bark like an arboreal should, that's normal because when they're smaller, they build some dirt curtains around the back of it. They hide behind the cork bark and they're more terrestrial. As they get older and they get bolder, then they'll hang out in the open. So all of these guys have outgrown these enclosures. They are now around just shy of 3 inches or 7.62 centimeters. So it's time to get them out of these. The problem with something like this, with it being this shallow because they brought the substrate up, is every time I open this, I run the risk of the spider being caught out in the open and bolting, and there's not much room for it to go other than out of it. And that's something you want to be very cognizant of when you're working with one of the fast arboreal species. So a note about ornatas. They are the largest Poecilotheria species out there. They are around the same size as P. rufilata, but I've seen bigger pictures of Ornatas out there. They can reach 10 inches or 25 centimeters. And in terms of temperament, they are often considered to be the most high-strung and potentially defensive of the Poecilotheria species. Now, when you consider a 10-inch spider with that type of nasty venom, that can be quite intimidating. So this is one that I know a lot of folks get into Poecilotheria species and they love the look of the Ornata. I sometimes, just give folks a heads up that this is one that can be a little more difficult to manage than, say, I don't know, a Vittata or a Regalis or even a P. metallica. But again, temperaments can vary from spider to spider. I once had a very laid-back female P. ornata. She was a dream. And I had 2 males that matured out a couple years ago, and they were pretty laid back. These guys have been a little crazy, and know that when they are smaller and juveniles, they tend to be a little more high-strung and prone to bolt. So what we are going to do is we're putting them into this enclosure here, and I'm getting a lot of this stuff out of the way because I got a funny feeling when we do the actual rehousing, it could take a minute, and I'm not going to be talking all that much. I love these for my juvenile arboreals or fossorial species. Yes, they're made out of the cloudy plastic, but they're easy to ventilate. They're a good size. I like for arboreals top opening enclosures because when they get startled, a lot of times they'll run around the enclosure rather than go up and out. These are the large food storage containers. I get them off Amazon. I think it's like $25 for 4 of them. It's not that expensive, but they are 7.5 inches by 7.5 inches by 9.1 inches high, or 19 by 19 by 23.1 centimeters. And love these for those species. Again, you can use, I have a lot of folks who go, can I put them in an 8 by 8 by 12 acrylic enclosure or something of that nature? Sure, you can. Just know that, though, if it's one of the ones that opens from the front, it can be a little more tricky to get them out of there in that case. And they're not going to be in there all that long because they grow quickly. I'm guessing at 3 inches, a couple mulch, these guys will be pushing 5 inches or so, and then we can put them in their adult enclosures. And I'll share some tips afterwards that you can do as far as rehousing Poecilotheria species. So now it is time for the nitty-gritty. I'm almost hoping that I've had very good luck, and this works better when you use cork bark rounds. I've moved to using a lot more cork bark rounds lately because what will happen is the spider will take up residence in the round, and then all you really have to do is, because as soon as the spiders disturb, it flattens, they use their natural camouflage to hide. You pick up the round and carefully place it in the new enclosure and let it come out on its own. Unfortunately, I did not have teeny tiny rounds for this one, so what we have is like half rounds, and the spider is... Ooh, okay, underneath. There we go. And I actually made sure this time to have my paintbrushes readily available. Speaking of natural camouflage, sweet. If you want to get a little shot of it there, you know how well it's showing up. There is one. I don't think, and just to be clear, anybody who watches my videos knows this, but people that haven't watched my videos before, I'm not about causing unnecessary risk by getting the spider out to pose. Meaning, if I can get the spider from point A, point B, and we don't see it in the video, so be it. This is more about how to set it up and how to correctly rehouse and safely rehouse. So I'm not going to purposely get them out in the open so we can get shot. So I was fully prepared. I don't think, yeah, there we go. I was fully prepared to not see them at all, but hopefully here's some shots of beautiful spiders. A lot of folks adore the Ornatas. I love them too, don't get me wrong. But it's one of those ones that when folks come to me and they've just discovered pokies, a lot of times Ornata is the one that they zone in on. So let's see how we're going to do this. Whoop, there we go. Not ideal, but oh, okay. Let's get a little shot. I'm going to get this ready, but if you want to get a little shot of the Ornata in the corner, and then after that, we can not mess around with that. What a beauty. Gorgeous spiders. I have a rufilata that's probably around the 8.5 inch mark or so, and that one's huge. I cannot imagine a 10-inch pokey. Okay, I can imagine one, but I've yet to see one. But I have seen proof. This is one of the ones that people talk about being rather large. I have seen proof that they get big. Somebody showed me a molt of a pure Ornata that I believe was right around the 10-inch mark. It might have been right at 10 inch. We are going to add water dishes after the fact. I did not put them in here because I want room to move. But just a note, if you see here, another tip, pokies tend to be generally photosensitive. They tend to run from the light. So what I have here is a piece of cardboard over this back corner, because had I gotten it out into the little bottle there and had to push in, I'd put it right in that corner. That's a darker space. They'd hunker down there and hide. I found that works out very well with Poecilotheria species. If you want to see it in action, we once rehoused a Poecilotheria metallica communal, right? And we blocked off part of it, had the bright lights in the front, and the spiders ran right to the dark spot and stayed there. All right, round 2. Get this out of the way. Now this one, I do have a cork bark round in, and one of the things I was looking to do, but I don't think I'm going to try it, is using this almost as a catch cup and being able to put it right back in here. But what we're going to do is shove some of this down here. What they will do is usually they will go down into the cork bark rounds. They will use that moss, pull it up, and start making their dirt curtains or moss curtains around here. And it is hot. We got some nice cool weather, and now it's like not so nice. And I'm going to stick a little bit of moss behind that. So what we're going to do is sometimes they end up behind the cork bark. So what that does is allow the spider, if it goes behind the cork bark, to feel safer. I'm going to stick that there like that. Another note, paper towels. Some people who haven't watched my videos may not know, but the paper towels are purposely in the corners because if a spider should get out and bolt, a lot of times what they'll do is they'll run until they find cover. So what I've found is that the ones that bolt will run, they'll take refuge under this and calm down, and that allows you to carefully remove the paper towel and cup them. And we also have this background here so the spider doesn't go over the top, over the back, and possibly under this unit or God knows where. All right, so this one here is... it's going to be a surprise. Not a good surprise. No. I'm guessing it's probably under. So let me get this ready. Oh, it's right there. Well, if you want to get a little shot of that one, showing its Ornata colors. I know I said I wouldn't do this, but we're going to try to get as many shots as we can. And Billy does not have an easy job doing this because we have a lot of bright lights, which makes the screen very difficult to see. So it's hard for her to see sometimes whether they're in focus, and they're always in focus. So nice job. If anybody hasn't told you lately, nice job. You don't get the credit you deserve.
Oh, Lord.
And people tell me a lot.
Oh, I know.
I get yelled
Lord.
at. A lot. We're going to start bringing the kids back because you're taking too much of my screen. No, I'm just my daughter and son, years ago when I first started doing this, were the ones that used to record, and my son would sniff the entire time. And then the poor kid would be sitting there trying to hold it in. And my daughter, who is very precocious, was always offering her own commentary, which led to some hilarious moments. Boom. Perfect. And the reason why, I have to say, I could have jinxed myself here. You don't have to get it. I'll cover this one up because we have enough of them. The reason why I talked about the temperament of these guys early on is because I was hoping they would have some nice, easy rehousing so people can see they're not that scary. I know they have a terrible reputation, but I've found them to be very controllable. All right, this one's done. This one's done. We definitely never want to put 2 spiders in the same thing. That would be tragic, and I would probably quit if I ever did that. Just make sure. Yep. So let me just talk a bit about what we've got in here before we do the last one, because this is actually going a lot faster than I thought it was. I have my own mix of substrate. It is cocoa fiber, peat, sand, and shredded sphagnum moss. I get the New Zealand stuff, and I cut it up with scissors. I could probably blend it, but and I like that way. And put some sand in, mix it all up, and it is moist. This is a cork bark, part of a cork bark round. Again, I didn't have any left. Unfortunately, last time I ordered them, I forgot to say I needed small ones. I got huge ones. But what I got behind it is some sphagnum moss here, again, so the spider can go behind there, feel secure. start doing its thing. We put leaf litter in because it looks pretty, and then we'll be putting water dishes in. And a note as far as how I keep these, moisture-wise, slings, moist substrate, juveniles, moist substrate, adults, moist substrate. I keep part of it moist, always make it rain and simulate a rain shower, keep part of it moist. Water dish, they do fine. And water dishes for anything like that I can fit a water dish in. So I won't necessarily put them in, obviously, the dram vials, but in deli cups or larger enclosures, definitely water dishes, and I have seen them drink. All right, this is the empty one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Good thing, after I just went go poking away at it. All right, are we going to be 3 for 3, or is somebody going to make, I mouthed off about showing that they don't have to be crazy before I did the last one, which was stupid. Someday I'll learn. There's a little guy right there. In. We'll keep that in there for him in case he wants to do some exploring. Now that I look at it, it looks like this one's probably about 2.5 inches. It's probably close to 3 inches. There's one big one, and I caught it on the top of the enclosure. I knew it was 3 inches because it was spread across the top of the enclosure completely out. So they're bigger. So this will be a good one here, a good size here for it to have probably, I'm guessing, 3 to 4 molts, and it'll be too big for this one. At which point we'd put it into an adult enclosure, which I've used the big Sterilite containers before. What I've started using for some of my big pokies is the 12 by 12 by, I believe they're 16-inch Exoterra, was it mini talls? Those are wonderful for it. This is, if the spider's going to get to be 10 inches, you definitely want to give it some size and some room, and you want to give it coverage. So when you set it up, you want to give it some artificial plants or real plants to hide behind. Unfortunately, I rehoused one of my adult female Rufilatas into one of those big ones, put a nice, beautiful pothos in there, had it all set up, and within a year, she killed the pothos, and now I have to put in a fake plant. So I did try. So as far as, while Billy's getting some beautiful footage of these guys, as far as the housing's concerned, as we talked about, little tiny ones you can start in larger dram vials. I do set them up arboreally, but I also give them a couple inches of moist substrate to burrow in because they will use it. As they get larger and you move them around, usually around the 2-inch size, 3-inch size, I move them into the juvenile enclosures, at which point, again, a few inches of moist substrate, cork bark hide. You saw all the fixings we had here. I do keep it moist. And then the adults, we talk, you're going to want to give them a lot of space and some coverage. Temperatures. I know there's a lot out there that these guys need to be kept hot. That's not necessarily true. Obviously, they come from hot regions, but I found that they do just as well in room temperatures. The first pokies I ever raised and raised to adulthood, and they live long lives, I started raising in the wintertime where it was like 68 degrees in my tarantula room. Nowadays, in the summertime, it's about high 70s to mid 80s. Right now, it's 79.5 degrees there, so around 80 degrees. Wintertime, right around 70 to 74 degrees. They do just fine. They are great eaters. I found that these guys, even when they were tiny, would take on pretty decent sized prey. For really tiny ones, I like to use small prey like red runner roach nymphs. They will eat pre-killed. You just have to put it at the entrance of their dens. Once they put on a little size, so they'll take prey about the size of their body. Juveniles, like one this size, I would drop in a medium cricket, and then adults, a few large crickets or even large Bidubia roaches. And thankfully, they all behave very well. I didn't honestly anticipate anything was going to go wrong, and if they did, it would be a good opportunity to show people what happens if they get out, but luckily everybody was nice and well behaved. Now, a couple tips as far as rehousing these guys. First tip, if you rehouse a sling in a deli cup, you can easily let the sling get up to like 2 3/4 or 3 inches or so. And as far as centimeters, that's 7.62 centimeters. The 3-inch size, you could conceivably put one into an adult enclosure. I know sometimes we try not to put the smaller spiders into the adult enclosures, but pokies are very active hunters. They will have no problem finding food, and I've had no issue with that. And when you're dealing with a large, very venomous spider, it sometimes makes more sense to limit the amount of stress you have to have for the spider and you during rehousings. Another thing you can do is if you are rehousing it from its sling enclosure into its adult enclosure, sometimes you can just, if Billy backs up for a second here, we'll cover this up. You're getting great footage, but we're going to show this. If I wanted to put this into its adult enclosure, this was a 32-ounce deli cup, the spider's yay big, I could easily take that, put it into the new enclosure, take the top off, let the spider come out on its own. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. Again, why work harder when you can work smarter? And as far as the cork bark tubes, I have a lot of folks mention this. I have done this before. I just did it with the cork bark flats as well. Poecilotheria species are very secretive. They would rather run and hide than stand and fight. And if they're caught out in the open, they will use their natural camouflage. So if you saw with the spiders here, they flattened on the cork bark and relied on the fact that they blended in and didn't bolt. When you're using a cork bark round, what will happen is they'll make their homes inside. And like we talked about earlier, you take the cork bark round out, cover the top of the piece of cardboard, put it into the new enclosure, let it come out on its own. Again, very, very easy. No point in risking extra contact with the spider if you can easily and appropriately put them into their new enclosures. So I think that about covers. I think we got everything. I have a lot of notes here, and they're really like chicken scratch. I hope these didn't make it on my notes ever make it on. If I don't think people are looking, my handwriting looks terrible. So I think you caught it a couple times, and I was embarrassed because I write way more. No, it wasn't your fault. I stuck the thing in the way, but I write way more pretty than that. But I think that about covers it. Again, always use respect. I have not, and I'm just going to throw this out there. I do a lot with, I think we call it Poecilotheria awareness. And I think, I'll mention, throw Dave's Little Beasties out there as somebody that actually treats them with respect and has very calm spiders. I think folks need to realize they're not the demons they were made out to be, or they have been made out to be. I think people put a lot behind the venom and the potential of a bite, but when it comes down to it, they're actually fairly calm spiders, and I have an easier time with these than I do with some of my new worlds. Again, the potential's there. You have to be respectful. You have to be calm and aware, but I've never had any issues from any of mine that I can think of. So that does it for this one. Poecilotheria ornata, 3 of them. Next time somebody talks about them being crazy or nasty or nuts, point them out to this video. We just rehoused 3 crazy little juveniles, and they were absolute little babies. So to conclude, when I talk about old worlds, and especially when I talk about Poecilotheria species, I think they get a bad rep because of the potential of a bad bite. Yes, their venom is nasty. I would not want to be bitten by one. However, most folks will tell you that if you jostle the cage a little bit before you pick it up, they'll either flatten out or they'll go hide in their burrows. They do not want to stand and fight. They also have excellent natural camouflage, as you've seen in this video, and you can probably see from the thumbnail that you can barely see the spider, and they will use that. So if they feel like they can flatten out and hide amongst the cork bark or whatever you've got in the enclosure, they're generally speaking going to sit there and not react unless you touch them with something. And even if you touch them with something like a brush, if you notice, you can keep them calm. So look for the videos out there that show the calm interactions with these guys. Have that in the back of your mind. If you're somebody that has some experience keeping tarantulas, specifically old world species, don't get in your head that you have to ignore these guys because they're too dangerous. They're not. Can you have outliers? Obviously, yes. With any specimen, any species, there are always temperament differentiations between different specimens. But I found, and so have a lot of the folks out there that I've talked to that keep Poecilotheria, these guys are really gentle giants. So that will do it for this one. As always, if you liked it enough to subscribe, very much appreciate. Click the little circle up in there. I'm going to put 2 more videos over here, probably a Poecilotheria one down there, and probably my old world video up there for people that are interested. If you take the time to comment, know that I'll take the time to respond. I'm back at school. I'm a teacher. I get busy. It can take a couple days, but I'll definitely get back to you. Guys, as always, stay safe. We'll catch you all next time.